enjoy the show, it says. Well, today's show is going to be awesome. We are recapping a month's worth of reading of The Speed of Trust right here in my hands. Welcome to the Champion Reads Book Club and this podcast discussion and conversations. Really excited to be here again. And joining me today is executive co-producer, Mr. Ian Sturmer. And I think that's funny. There's a famous rapper named Ty Dolla Sign, but this is a little bit different. I like that. I just wanted to tease you in the moment. I think it's really great.
I'll work on the beatbox later on for you.
Ooh, I look forward to that. I'll join you. So really excited that you guys are all here. And thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Thank you for contributing. Again, this is Champion Reads, brought to you by Champion Circle, as you see in the top right corner there. Champion Circle is a networking association that provides information and personal development curriculum to help you grow your business at accelerated rates. We have everything from in-person meetings to online training to accountability coaching and programs and fun events. So all of the above is very, very important, powerful, and can help you accelerate your goals and successes. All right, enough about that. Let's get into today's discussion. And again, we are talking about the amazing book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen R. Covey. And Stephen M.R. Covey, the son of Stephen R. Covey. And this is a really powerful book. I mean, again, in the first episode, we were covering topics on trust and a few other things too. But today we're kind of bounce around the book a little bit. And we're going to start off with some key discussions about trust and a few other things too. So if you don't mind, Ian, I'll tee you off, put the ball on the tee, and let's hit a home run and get started with the first item of discussion we wanted to talk about.
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking about trust, and I have kind of a concept with that trust really is only developed when there's a problem. Until there's an issue, something comes up, there's no need for trust. So it started the idea of customer service or something working well. And, if every time you pick up your phone, it works, you don't think, wow, this is a great phone. You just accept it. It's just the way it is. When there's a problem and you have to call customer service, and then they send you a new phone, airmail the next day, and they're answering right away, you start to think, wow, this is a great company, because they had a bad product, but they came through and they fixed it. In a restaurant, if you think of your best experience in a restaurant, it was probably when something happened that was wrong. They gave you the wrong order and they came back and they fixed it, and they gave you a free dessert and brought out a violin to serenade you during the meal. And all of these things, that's build up the trust. That's build up the respect for them. So I don't want to say that we need to make a mistake now and then, but I think in building trust, we have to be aware of our mistakes first and own up to those mistakes and use those as chances to build something stronger and better. So that trust really is built. It doesn't just exist. It's not handed to us, but it's built through pain and suffering, for lack of a better term for it. I keep jumping into different analogies of weightlifting or bodybuilding or running a marathon or anything that you want to get better at. And it really comes down to taking those pain points that are there, fixing them and making them better. And then as people see that effort, that's what builds the trust. That's what makes it stronger. That's what solidifies those relationships that we have. So I kind of want to just start with that idea of, messing up first and building trust out of our mistakes. So I turn it back to you on that. What do you think of that?
I'm happy to answer that because I'm the biggest, I don't know what the right word here is. It's not culprit, it's not victim, it's I'm the first one to tell you that I do this. Yep, that's the one. Yep, that's the one. It's interesting because that truly is one of the fastest ways to learn. I mean, if you see it from that perspective, like by breaking somebody's trust can be hard to regain it on the return side. But let's talk about like a product that and I have a couple of examples, but to directly answer your question, I have a great answer, thought, and example. But let's talk about like a product. Like you usually buy a particular product at the grocery store because it's reliable, you love it, and let's say it's milk. Let's say it's 2% milk, and you get 1 gallon of milk that when you drop it into your cup and then you put it to your mouth, and all of a sudden you feel that what is it called? The hard cheese like texture that slides on you. It is so gross just even describing it. And all of a sudden you are so grossed out, you're spewing it into the sink, and you're like, I'm never going to drink milk ever again. But over time, you get over it and you crave that milk again. Some people are different and they hold grudges for the rest of your life. Women. um, but essentially, like, you over time will get over the fact that you had one bad experience with something that was good, better, and something that you've trusted and have had such a important lifestyle with. So I think time has a lot to do with it. If you're willing to put in the time to give them more chances or give them more opportunities or work with them and allow them to either prove themselves or to do other things, I think that's very, very helpful. I mean, if you're a bank or a credit card company, not 100% of your customers make online payments on time, and not everyone is really able to stick to their payments all the time. It's just something that people forget. People don't have money in the bank at the time, and stuff like that happens too. And so companies have to be willing to trust their customers up front, and over time see that they have the ability to do what they said they would do in an initial contract, in order to know that they are a good customer. I use these examples because not only have I experienced both of these experiences, but I am also the first person to say, like, when I meet people, I tend to go 100% all in. And I have found that either my communications or their communications can either improve or decrease our trust in one another. But my ultimate answer to your question, Ian, is I think it takes time. It takes time to build trust. It takes time to rebuild trust. And when you come from that place of rebuilding trust, it almost amplifies your commitment, your connection, and even your ability to give and serve someone a little bit better. Now, I'm not saying go out there and introduce yourself and then break trust right from the beginning. That's not how you want to start your life, but you definitely can spend a great deal of time, effort, and energy rebuilding trust by being normal, being genuine and authentic, and by creating opportunities to serve other people. And if you're a likable, trustable person, then it will come to fruition. You will be able to rebuild from there. But time and effort and energy are my answers to that question. And I'd love to turn it back to you and ask, what do you think? What are some of your thoughts about, I guess, starting from a place of rebuild?
Yeah, I'm going to give a quick apology. I might have some noise behind me in here, so I might mute it real quick. But I have to point out, as a teenager, I was visiting my sister's house, and I reached in the fridge and I grabbed a peach yogurt, and I took a bite of it, and it was bad, um, really bad. And to this day, I will not eat peach yogurt. Other flavors are fine, but not peach. So I've held a grudge, and that peach flavor always tastes spoiled to me. I love peaches. I love other peach flavored things, but peach yogurt always does. So I have narrowed it down and haven't moved beyond that one. Um, but I've been able to say, it's not yogurt. I'm sure I've had other flavors of yogurt that have turned bad more often in the past, but that one stuck with me. So I guess it'd be great if I had a reason to share why that was, but sometimes it just sticks with you and we don't know why that happens. But to go back to your question, I guess, and maybe I'll get an answer to this one later. How do we build some of that trust and overcome those issues? And I'm thinking of a couple examples that have happened in the business world. The Ford Pinto is one of the recognized as worst cars ever out there. Um, and Lee Iacocca, when he was in charge of Ford and doing that, set a price limit on how much the car could cost. And as a result, there was a piece that would have put it over the price limit, but it was a safety issue that when the car was hit from the back, the gas tank could ignite and explode. And he refused to allow them to go over their price to put that piece in there. And one, it made the car less safe, which is a bad thing. But it gave Ford a big bad reputation for many years that they didn't care enough about someone's safety. They were too worried about the bottom line. And it took them a long time to overcome some of that trust. Because of that, they weren't willing to spend that little bit of extra money. And perhaps a very different story, a different example, but Tylenol, probably before you were born, there was a scare where some nut job out there poisoned some Tylenol tablets and went around to different drugstores and stuck these poison tablets with cyanide in them into the Tylenol containers. And sadly, several people died from that, which is a horrible thing. Tylenol pulled everything off of the shelves. They created new packaging. So, those little plastic wraps that we all hate, you have to peel off. They instituted those things, anti-tamper devices, and they spent a lot of money to fix a problem that wasn't their fault by any means. But they stepped right in front and said, we're going to do everything we can to protect our customers, to bring safety measures in. And this probably cost them millions and millions of dollars. And this was back in the mid 80s that this happened. You can kind of see probably where the idea of trust went from Ford, who wasn't willing to budge on what they thought was right, and Tylenol, who was not in the wrong at all, but went way out of their way to get in front of a problem and help prevent that from ever happening again. And thankfully, I haven't heard those kind of stories in the last decades. So those are kind of some bigger business examples of when somebody found a problem, did they fix it or not? Did they take the steps? And I think it comes down to really, I don't want to simplify this and just say trust, but they cared about what people thought of them. They cared about their reputation, and they took the steps to fix those issues so that they could move forward. Tylenol might have said, oh, if we don't do it, we're going to lose too much money and go out of business. In my mind, they said, we want to protect our customers, and did it. So I don't know what their real thought was, their real discussions, but that trust is first in my mind because of their actions, and watching those actions that they took has built that trust. And okay, I was supposed to say that I have a loyalty to Tylenol from now because of then, and I do get the cheap brand sometimes. But if I'm ever in a situation, I still say Tylenol. I still encourage, that's still the word I use because I have that trust in them. So I guess that's really the point. If there's an issue, are we building up our trust with people? Or are we getting through it? Are we making excuses? Are we skirting issues? Or are we facing it, coming out and saying, this is how we're going to fix it? Because those solutions that we offer, I think, is what builds that trust, showing that we're going to take care of people. So.
I love this, Ian, and having a lot of experience with communication, I think you bring up a good point that not just over communication, but just communicating the plans of action. It's not enough these days to just say we're sorry, even though that validates a lot of people's emotions and what they're considering. But the Tylenol example is a really important example because, people may not die in the process of losing your trust, but in a most general sense, but it can feel like that sometimes. It can feel pretty devastating. And regaining your trust with a person, a company, a product, a service, anything of the above, that is it's definitely important. So it's not enough to just say sorry these days. It's more than enough to say, here is the plan. We hope to remedy the situation, the resources we're putting in, and the time we're going to uh, um, um, utilize to remedy the situation and to be better and improve. And, to this day, I mean, like you said, like there have been very little, almost no occurrences of temperament and changes of pills and stuff like that. So it's important to recognize that when you do communicate your plan of action and how you're doing it, it's going to bring together a solid plan to regain trust and do so over time. I love this too, because you bring up a really great point, which is that a lot of trust requires action. Rebuilding of trust requires action. And the more that you put into it, the more you will get out of it. Let's say you're a small business. You're not a major corporation like Tylenol or one of these major pharmacy companies. Say you're a tiny small business, and let's say that you came out with a product, and let's just say you're human and you haven't marketed yourself in a while. And so by coming back into the market of marketing a product or a service, you may be, first of all, you may have lost the trust of your current following because they haven't seen you in a while. But again, over time, is letting people know what you're doing. I've seen, I'm trying to remember which company it was, but there was a great campaign. If I can think of it, I'll let you know. But it was basically the We're Back campaign, and they admitted that they were way off track. I think it was actually GoDaddy. Okay, and if you remember, GoDaddy went down this road of having really basically scantily clad women uh, doing their commercials about getting a website through GoDaddy.com. And they were really doing this. And then, it kind of went dark after a little while. And then they came back and they made fun of themselves for firing the guy who came up with the idea to do those campaigns. And they were even like dramatizing out the situation of firing this individual and getting him off and going back to what the people really wanted and what they needed to know. And it was just a really cool example of saying, you know what? That was ridiculous. And I can't believe we let someone in. And then they dramatized it more and pretended that this person actually took over the company by force and was the son of a rich billionaire who was doing nothing but spending their money freely. And it was pretty hilarious, the stories that they wrote. But they did come out with a bit of we're back and we apologize. We've been completely off track and this is where we're going. And that just reminds me, like, again, if you were completely off track or even off the radar, there's still really, really great ways of broadcasting yourself, improving your brand, building the same trust or better trust. Because sometimes a move like that is, we got the wrong clientele and now we need to make a change in how we're doing this. And I don't know, that's the way I see it. It's just a really, really powerful place where trust can always be rebuilt, no matter how far you've gone. Maybe not if you've, gone as far as murder or something like that, but there to an extent, for businesses, branding, and a few other things, brands can be rebuilt, and brands can also die with the mistrust and be reinvented through a new name and a new photo and a new color. But I don't know, there's just a few thoughts there.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point with that. So GoDaddy went through and explained, said, "Oh, we're sorry we did this. This was the wrong message." They played with it, they built up some of that, but they went through and took the time to admit fault, say they're changing, show how they change. And it kind of reminded me just a simple personal level. So my wife, hopefully she won't see this episode. She'll bring me an email and says, "Oh, look at this email that so-and-so sent me." And she'll read it, and she will read it in the most negative tone of voice possible when she reads it. And then I'll read it out loud in a normal tone of voice, and I'm thinking it looks fine. She'd say, no, look at this. And she'll read it again in that tone of voice, which makes it sound horrible. And I guess the point of that is she has a history of trust relationship with that person who wrote the email. And from that, in her mind is their whole attitude build up. So if she didn't have that trust with them, she's going to see that as a negative way of doing it. Where I don't know that person, so I see it as a positive or just a neutral one. We've got the GoDaddy thing. If how often do we see a politician come out and apologize for an indiscretion? And how often do we believe them and think they've truly repented of their evils and they're now a saintly person again? We don't have the trust. It's not there with these people. But we've all had friends who have done something wrong and come say, I'm sorry, that was the wrong thing. I didn't mean that. And we forgive them. So again, taking that time to build up the trust first. And through little mistakes, through correcting mistakes, through going the extra mile is going to build up that trust, that quality idea in our relationships or in our businesses. So that when we have to step in front of the camera and say, I'm sorry, people will look at us like GoDaddy or like Tylenol and say, I think they're sorry. I'm going to go back and try them again. As opposed to, I don't have a bad example to give, whichever politician you don't like, because they've all had something out there. But yeah, it's that you can't give up on trust. We might, even being out of the spotlight in our businesses for a while is going to make people wonder, what were we doing? Were we actually getting better? Was something, okay, I'm jumping topics here, but we see it on your TV show. Like all of a sudden, one of the main actors or actresses in the TV show isn't in 4 episodes in a row. And my wife Googles it automatically to find out where they are. And we watched one show and one actor was in rehab for 4 months. And then the actress on the same show was pregnant. So immediately we looked at that and thought, well, I now have less trust for him and more trust for her. Because we found out a reason. We looked at the story behind it. So I guess there's my point. We need to have a story behind our trust. We need to have people be able to follow our story so that they can see, even if there's a bump, that doesn't mean that we're distrustful. It just means that we made a wrong decision. We bought a wrong product. Something didn't work the way we intended it. But we're here to correct it. And that's our story, and we're going to stick with it. So,
yeah, I agree on so many fronts, and to each is their own, right? Trust can be seen, perceived in so many ways, but one of the things that I love is when you take when you take a concept like trust, it's also cultural, and obviously you can use acts of kindness and so many other approaches to rebuilding trust through kindness and effort and service. And I think that's interesting what you brought up, Ian, is that some people are probably going to be skeptical, as they should, right? Trust is hard to earn, and once broken, it's hard to rebuild and gain back. But when people look at it in a certain light, it's really hard to rebuild that. And I believe that there's a, how do you explain it like this? But if you were to move to Mexico, right, and you build relationships with the community, and then all of a sudden you do something that breaks their trust, I can't guarantee that the humanity will be the same and that you can use the same principles that we're talking about to regain trust. But there are probably foundational elements of what we're saying that work in every culture or in most cultures, but in Western civilization, a lot of these steps and processes are definitely helpful resources in rebuilding and regaining trust if it has been broken. And Ian, you might know this. If I were to go to Asia and let's say I'm in the Philippines or Korea or China, I don't know, I'm in one of those great, awesome countries. Their cultural expectations are way different, and in many ways people cannot be bought, right? Or people can be bought. And people sometimes cannot be out explained. Once you do the wrong thing, then you will have a hard time coming back. A great example of this for me is um, I have skepticism about the National Basketball Association, NBA. And a lot of this derived from a couple athletes who I respect and who I've gotten to know and who have shared personal testimonials, um, basically defaming the NBA as an organization that treats its players equally and treats them well, and also that there are certain aspects of what's the word I'm looking for, of man, I'm losing my words today, but essentially ethics. Ethics is the word I'm looking for. There's ethical and non-ethical decisions that are being made every single day, and they're all at the helm of the commissioner of the NBA. And after hearing a few testimonials and perspectives from people I know and trust, I have since had a huge skepticism for the organization in and of itself. I have loved the players and I've loved some of the teams and the privately owned franchise organizations. But as far as the organization in and of itself, I have had a huge disagreement and skepticism towards that company. And just like your peach yogurt experience, like it just takes one bad egg to convince you that you will never have peach yogurt again. You'll have the strawberry, you might have the peaches and cream, but peaches in and of itself, And I feel that, but again, the point I'm trying to make is it's not just about what was done to you, but it's what was done to others. And that's where broken trust has exponential power. And you got to understand that when you gossip, when you share, when you tell people what has happened because of what a company has done, you spread the distrust amongst communities. And that's probably also why in certain communities people hate Tylenol and will only advocate for Advil, or the reason why there's such a divide between Coca-Cola lovers and that other group of people who particularly enjoy that awful drink called Pepsi. I'm just kidding. And it just goes down the line. Culture has a lot to do with trust and mistrust. There are people who don't understand UFC, which is the Ultimate Fighting Championships, right? But there are people who understand martial arts and karate and MMA fighting as an art, as a sport, and so many other things. And so people who look outward, who are on the outside of this community, think, wow, this is a ruthless sport for entertainment and it is ridiculous. And they have a distrust for this particular brand, organization, and sport and activity. But there's a group of people on the inside who say, no, this isn't just entertainment. It is art. It is finesse. It is strategy. And so it just depends on which side. And I'm using extremes for an example because I know that they kind of hit home for a lot of people. I was on the outside of the UFC thing, and I had a friend take me to a UFC event, and I have a completely different understanding of the sport and a respect and a perception. So it does come a long way. You can easily build distrust amongst individuals, but the exponent in this particular equation is the community trust and distrust created based on actions to one person. So I guess in many ways, if you're on the provider side, be careful who you break trust with. And if you're on the recipient side, be cognizant, open, and aware of who you spread distrust with. Because again, I just made a public claim about my distrust for the NBA, which is too bad because I love watching basketball. I love following my teams. I love the sport. And I hate to make such claims, but again, my distrust is a feeling, an emotion associated with a community that I love and respect. And that just goes a long way. Now, commissioner of the NBA, if you ever hear this message and you would like to have a conversation, I would more than gladly fly to your office and would love to sit down and tell you what I heard. But more importantly, to gain a relationship from it. And I hope that's a mature way of describing this rather than just saying, write them off. They're the worst in the world. Like, I don't want to be that person. But there's a few more examples I thought would be interesting context.
Yeah. And I love that. An idea of community. 2 points. I'll jump back to first is that interpersonal one. So you've heard some things from people you trust. You've got some ideas from that. But you're also aware of the whole situation going on, that, basketball is not evil because one person said or did one thing. And you can see a bigger picture of it. And I think in our business and our lives, we need to make sure that we're presenting ourselves as a bigger picture so that when people see a negative that's come out, they're not saying, oh, John Kovach Jr., no way. He one time said that he didn't like somebody in basketball, so I'm never listening. Instead, they're going to say, well, I don't know if he's right about that or not, but man, if you listen to him speak, listen to what you can learn from him, listen to this, see what you can gain here. We can see a bigger picture of everything going on. And from that is the idea of communities as well. As we associate within certain communities, we build a trust of that community. And hopefully I don't get myself in trouble saying this, but you see things like Black-owned business or women-owned business. And okay, we're white guys. And again, I don't want to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm not necessarily looking at those and saying, oh, I need to go support that because of those. I don't want to, not support them or anything negative, but it doesn't resonate with me as much. Where other communities, it's really going to resonate with those communities and it's going to build up that trust in it. Now, if I say it's a white-owned business, it comes across completely wrong. And that puts it in a different community we don't want to associate with. But as we build up in those communities and associate ourselves with the quality, and sorry, just jumping to the example there, many, many years ago, Hyundai came out in the US and it wasn't very well known. And my wife and I went to look at one, and my dad's smarter than I am. So I asked him what he thought about it. He says, oh, I never heard about him. So what other car does the dealership sell? What other brand are they selling it with? So I can know if that's a brand I trust or not. And I think it was Isuzu was the other brand, which he hadn't heard of either. So there was no trust buildup. If they'd been sold with Cadillac, or Lincoln or Lexus, whatever, there would have been a trust buildup, but they didn't have that. So as we're out there, associating ourselves and getting into communities, we can build trust through that as well. How often do we see a product that, this contains Hershey's syrup? I think, oh, that has a brand I trust, so therefore I will now trust this one. So being aware of our associations, not being associated with basketball commissioners, but instead with good players. You can be associated with blueberry yogurt, but not peach yogurt. And of course, that's kind of a silly side of it. But, to build trust, it really needs to be looked at from all angles. If we're not associating with people that are trustworthy, we're not going to be seen as trustworthy. If we're not, correcting our mistakes and standing behind things and showing our quality and our caring side, we're not going to build that trust. Um, and that'll build and destroy businesses. Um, I won't give a negative example of a product, but we all have a product that we won't buy anymore because the quality was bad.
Hmm.
So, not going to get that anymore. It doesn't have the trust. We probably all had products or brands that we like and we buy, and we get a bad one and we buy them again. I just bought a new phone, which you can't see because it's a green screen when I hold it up. But being an outlier, I bought a Sony phone because I like Sony. I have trust in the Sony brand. Bought 2 Sony TVs that were horrible, broke right away. But in my mind, that brand is still quality. So I went out and I got the Sony phone instead of the other ones that had higher reviews because they built a trust in me from past products. So, Covey talks about trust, the one thing that changes everything. And it really is. The trust of a product is going to last long after the product itself was good or bad. If I say, what's the best school or best college in America? Other than where you went, you would probably say Harvard. Harvard has the reputation as the best school in the country. It's not. It's not ranked number 1 in anything. It's not the top of any list out there. But its reputation, the trust we have in it is still there. So build that trust. That's the strongest commodity we can make is building trust. And I think that's kind of the ultimate point of Covey's book. If you don't have trust, you're not going to get anywhere. You'll quickly disintegrate. We've seen companies do that, and friendships probably do that as well.
So. Yeah, and I think I think this episode you've done what we call a there's the first truth bomb of our episode. I agree, and I think that was a really, really powerful point to sort of wrap this up and share. I mean, there's so many different aspects of trust. I was going to put up on a banner here for everyone to see. Covey talks about the 5 waves of trust, and in each of our conversations and examples, we've covered each one of these waves. And waves can be perceived as it starts with one and it and it grows into more, or waves can be seen as the various levels, and it can also be seen as the various categories, because again, a wave of trust can be something that persists, or it can be isolated like a silo. But here you got self-trust, which is your own personal relationship, like you described with Sony. Despite the broken TVs, you still trust them as a reputable brand. And so you go as far to buy a phone from them. Relationship trust has a lot to do with conversation, with actions, the trust built through what I call you've got a calculated way, and then you've got also a behavioral way. But I think that relationship trust comes from behavior, and a lot of that is communication. It can be things that are expressed there. You've also got the third wave is organizational trust. Here I am talking about my distrust for the NBA as an organization. I've heard corrupt rumors, but as far as the relationship with the team, the players, the people I love, I still don't demise any of them, and I think they're important. Market trust. This is product-based market, and knowing if most people think that whatever's going on over there at Wall Street is crooked, right? And that's because we just don't understand. But there's so much more to see, because I know some people who work on Wall Street, and I don't think of them as poor people or horrible people, but anyways, there's some really, really important stuff there. And then you've got societal trust, which we covered in the conversation about social communities and tribes and just following. So I think this is a very, very important place to see. I personally, I mean, I've read this book and I've listened to it on Audible. Highly recommend The Speed of Trust. It was actually your suggestion that we read this and discuss it, Ian. And I've learned a lot about myself as well as a lot about how I treat others in respect to my levels of trust or the waves of trust. It also is a way of intro and extrospecting, if that's even a word, intro searching. Nah, that's not a word. Looking inside myself to find out what I do believe. Because again, I am a product of societal trust, but I am also an experienced individual who builds self trust. And I think every single one of these elements and waves have influenced my life and my decisions to a degree. And I think everyone else is pretty much the same. I would say that there are very few anomalies, unless you're Patrick Starr living under a rock. It is very hard for us to not be able to associate with one of these waves. And that's a powerful tool to know. So, whether you're starting your business, whether you're growing a brand, whether you're just trying to make your life better in a certain way, an evaluation of how you put out trust and where you gain trust is a great, I guess, introspective and feedback based. What am I looking for here? Again, I'm losing my words. Evaluation of your life, your behaviors, yourself, and where trust stems for you. Because whether you live in China or the United States, you definitely have a give and trust more. I think that that's beautiful. Thank you for dropping the truth bomb and bringing this book really to our attention and illuminating the ideas that we need to look inward and outward for ourselves.
Anytime.
Great
Yeah.
response. any
Yeah.
any last words or thoughts before we close this one out?
Yeah, just kind of the last one. We talked a lot about building trust and that importance of trust, kind of on a personal level as well as a business and a wider range of it. Um, as you were talking at the end, it kind of made me think. I guess I need to reevaluate where I'm putting trust in other people as well, and other organizations. Am I allowing myself to be unduly influenced um, when I shouldn't be? Um, maybe it was just that one peach yogurt and the rest is great and I would love them. Um, and there's a kind of a thought. I heard a story a while ago that a man had gone to the doctor and he was given a certain diagnosis. And he came home and the first thing he did was go on Google to look it up, because maybe somebody on Google had a different diagnosis than the medical professional who had known him for decades and worked with him. Um, and instead, he would find a random stranger on Google that would give him the better answer. Um, do we sometimes put that trust out there in people that we really shouldn't? And it's easy to do. And it kind of made me think, am I taking time to give my trust, which is a commodity, to the people who are deserving of it? Or am I giving my trust to the people who are just giving me a confirmation bias? Um, so, kind of a different side of it that we don't have time to go into now, but just made me think about not just how am I trying to get trust or build trust with other people, but how am I spending the trust that they have earned with me? And am I repaying that trust? Because I think how I give trust to someone else is going to very much reflect back on how much people are going to trust me. So I'll close with that idea.
Very, very well said. And I love that. And thank you for sharing everything you did, Ian. And if you are listening to our podcast or you're watching us on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your questions. Were there topics you wanted us to cover that we didn't quite get to, or were there discussions that we didn't share that you would have loved to hear more about? Please let us know. We are obviously very, very busy human beings. We do this podcast out of just our own free will and choice, but also because it interests us and it gets us into the weeds, into the pages of some of these impressive books, and we really enjoy it. But making time for a lot of this does come out of our own pockets. So if you'd like to subscribe, if you'd like to contribute to our show, or if you'd like to learn more about Champion Circle in and of itself, please go to mychampionscircle.com. That'll take you to one of our web pages that has a lot of great resources and so much more. With that being said, too, I'd like to announce that the next book topic we're going to be discussing is one of my personal favorites, which is Outwitting the Devil, written by Napoleon Hill. And let me just set you up. Let me just let you get excited about this. I'm so excited for my team to watch this, and I see you later, construction workers. See you guys. Hey, you're excused. Lunch in five. That was awesome. Let me just set you guys up, though. But I'm so excited for not only my team here at Champion Circle to read this book, but to read it with me and discuss it. And I know we have a few short weeks to cover it, but I'm telling you guys, this book is one of the few books that have changed my life. I mean, other than personal scripture and inspirational text, Outwitting the Devil is one of the few books in history that has ever turned my head, opened my eyes, and got me out of the stage of drifting and into a space of full cognitive conscious awareness. It has woken up my conscious and subconscious and simultaneousness to believe how great I truly am. This book will change your life if you allow it to. All right, I'm going to leave it there. It's a fantastic read. Yes, you get to hear a conversation where Mr. Napoleon Hill himself has a dream where he has an interview with the devil, and it is illuminating. It is awakening, and it is very interesting from a perspective. And I got to tell you, and we'll get into this later, but this book was just recently released because it was archived and shoved into a place where it would not be found nor published until after the Hills have both passed. They feared that releasing this book might bring condemnation on their posterity. And it is such a valuable read. And luckily, in the trusting hands of great annotators, Don Green, CEO and president of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and my trusted mentor herself, Miss Sharon Lecter, and a few other individuals. Oh, back for lunch. Okay, we're good. They have taken the time to annotate and put interest in the various texts of the pages. So, boom, there's the marketing drop about this book. I hope you'll join us for a few conversations about Outwitting the Devil.
I have not read this book, so I am excited to learn about it with and from you.
And I'm excited to learn and explore it with others too. As personally, it was interesting, but as a group, I'm excited that it's going to illuminate so many other areas. So I'll leave it at that. Ian, thank you for your time and dedication to this podcast and this sharing. And I'm looking forward to tapping into more knowledge and discussions on a few more of my favorite books coming up. So we'll see you guys next time on the Champion Reads podcast. And we're grateful that you've been here. Again, send us an email to the team at My Champion Circle if you have any questions, requests, or anything else. And again, don't forget to visit mychampionscircle.com. We'll see you guys soon on the next episode.